Naomi thought cutting ties with her toxic family would be the end of the story, but when a cryptic note appears on her doorstep, she realizes walking away was only the beginning of a deeper betrayal. In a world where silence becomes power and freedom comes with a hidden cost, Naomi is about to uncover a secret that will challenge everything she believed about loyalty, debt, and the price of peace. The phone buzzed again once more. My old iPhone slid slightly across the wooden table, as if trying to escape the screen. Kept lighting up with names I knew by heart. Mom, Dad, Ethan, the same. 3 looping like a recurring nightmare 6 months ago. I walked away from that house in the suburbs of Tulsa. No shouting, no tears. I just left quietly after my mother screamed the final words, "You ungrateful brat, get out and don't come back." I turned my back as she said it, not because I wanted to appear noble. I was simply too drained to respond. After years of living like a shadow, I had no energy left to argue now. I was curled up in a creaky chair inside a 1-bedroom apartment in North Oklahoma City. Every corner of the place bore a weary hue, but at least it was mine. No one waited behind the door with a phone bill or a cold accusation, just the soft creak of the ceiling fan and lazy sunlight slipping through the curtains. The phone lit up again. "Mom," for the 5th time. A text popped up even before the ringtone. "Naomi, if you still care about this family, even a little, please pick up. Ethan is overwhelmed." I pressed my lips together, swiping across the screen without unlocking it. I'd heard that phrase too many times. He's struggling, he needs you, he's your little brother. Ethan, the one Mom had coddled from age 10 through 31, the one who never held a real job, yet always had new clothes, new gaming consoles, and someone to clean up his messes. That someone used to be May. Used to work 60 hours a week at the insurance firm, then come home to change light bulbs, cook dinner, and cover the electric bill. I used to be the good daughter, the one holding the family above water with her blood and sleep-deprived nights. I once believed that if I just tried a little harder, they'd finally see me. I was wrong. I flipped the phone to silent mode, then placed it face down. The echo of its vibration still buzzed in my skull, like a curse that hadn't quite worn off, but it was okay. I'd learned how to keep it from cutting into my chest. I'd learned how to sit still and let them panic. The day I left, the sky was clear, no rain, no thunder to foreshadow anything. I packed a few outfits, my laptop and an old teddy bear, into a rolling suitcase and locked the door behind me. With the finality of a period at the end of a sentence, they told me I wasn't welcome back, and I respected that entirely. What they didn't expect was that I would disappear. Mom still sends weekly emails. Dad drops the occasional line, like you shouldn't let your emotions rule you. Ethan, not once has he apologized. But yesterday he finally texted, "I can't believe you left Mom and Dad like this. The whole family is suffering because of you, suffering because of me, because I stopped paying their water bill and mortgage." I leaned back, feeling the sore pressure along my spine from the worn but steady chair. I took a long, steady breath and realized the silence no longer scared me like it used to. It was clarity, proof that I existed outside their control. Every phone buzz was a scarred reminder, not of guilt, but of the freedom I'd fought for the past 6 months. I hadn't answered, not out of cruelty, but because I had to retrain myself not to react to cries for help that weren't real. I had gotten used to being forgotten, but the feeling of being taken for granted, like the bathroom light or the Wi-Fi, was something I didn't learn to name until much later. When I was 11, I remember the exact day Ethan scratched Dad's pickup truck. It was a Ford F-150 that he always called my third child. Ethan reversed without opening the garage door fully, leaving a long gash like a claw mark across the gray paint. Mom found it first. She gasped loudly, then silence. A minute later, she turned to me and asked, "Naomi, did you touch the truck?" I froze. I had been at school at the time. I had had a math test that morning and didn't even come home for lunch, but I was still the one questioned. Ethan sat at the kitchen table with a slice of cold pizza, quiet like it had nothing to do with him, and honestly, it never did. Favoritism in our house didn't show up like a storm. It crept in like mold, slow, quiet, sinking into every brick and crevice. Some things you only realize once they've already taken over your breath. I was never called smart or someone to be proud of what I did. Straight A's, honor rolls, state math awards was just the bare minimum someone like you should achieve. Meanwhile, Ethan got thunderous applause just for attending all his classes. For a week, I worked as a waitress at a steakhouse in Norman for 3 years during college. Every night, I'd get off around 10, hands aching from carrying hot trays, still rushing back to my rental to study for the CPA exams. Ethan majored in recreational sports and dropped out midway. Mom said it's just not his learning style. I remember once I had a fever of 103 degrees and still had to drive myself to the hospital because no one had time to take me. But when Ethan had a mild stomachache from eating too many fries, Mom called an ambulance. Both Mom and Dad showed up at the ER, while I got a text, "There's instant noodles at home." I won't be back in time. When I got my first full-time job at the insurance company 6 years ago, I called home to share the news. My dad said, "Good, don't forget to keep up with your health insurance payments." But when Ethan was invited to a weekend woodworking class, the entire family posted about it on Facebook like he just landed a full ride to Harvard. I used to believe that if I did everything right, things would balance out. I thought if I just stayed out of trouble, proved my worth, they would finally see me as a real part of the family, not just a shadow cast by the son they truly cared about. But I was wrong. One night I came home after a long shift, back aching, neck stiff as stone. I walked into the living room and saw Mom curled up on the couch with Ethan flipping through a photo album. The only picture of me was tucked between pages, faded, overexposed, and uncaptioned. Meanwhile, Ethan had 3 whole spreads labeled "Our Angel's Childhood." I stood there for a long moment waiting for someone to notice me. No one turned around, no one spoke, no one asked if I'd eaten. I went to my room, shut the door, and that was the first night I dreamed of running, not running away, running towards something I had spent nearly 30 years in, a house I thought was a shelter, only to realize I had never truly been welcome, not as a daughter, just as a tool, the one who carried the weight, filled in the gaps, and was always responsible so others could afford to fall apart. The older I got, the more I realized every compliment they gave Ethan was a slap in the face to my effort. They didn't need me to shine, they just needed me to stay quiet, not ask for anything, not set boundaries. As long as I kept paying for a family built on sweet lies and suffocating expectations. I still remember the exact moment things started to go off track. It was in February, 1 week before the year-end tax deadline. I was working overtime at the office, just finishing 40 hours in 3 consecutive days when I left my desk. The screen clock showed 11:45 p.m. The streetlights reflecting off my car windows gave me a splitting headache, and I still had to go home and finish a financial forecast report for a client. Mom called just as I was opening the car door. "Naomi, I'm sorry to bother you, but the gas bill this month came out to nearly $190. Your dad forgot to pay it. Can you handle it for me?" I froze mid-motion, my work badge still hanging around my neck. Before I could say anything, she added, "Touch this once, I'll pay you back tomorrow." How many times had I heard that line before? Still, her voice made me soften. I transferred the money right there in the parking lot, then drove home like it was no big deal. But that was just the beginning. The next week it was the electric bill, then water, then internet. At first, Mom always said, "Just a short-term advance. I'll repay you tomorrow." Gradually, that turned into family, supposed to help each other. And Dad, "Yeah, Naomi's got it." No one asked if I had the money. No one apologized for calling me late at night. I was the kid with a monthly paycheck, so of course I was expected to shoulder it. A month later, Ethan lost his credit due to missing payments on a graphic design laptop. Mom called me during a meeting. "Sweetheart, Ethan's in a tough spot. He's trying, but no one's helping him. Can you co-sign and get a replacement? It's just an old laptop. Maybe $950. I'll pay you back gradually. I knew what that gradually meant, but I still said yes because back then I didn't fully understand that when love gets exploited, it stops being love within 3 months. I was covering most of the household's monthly bills, around $1,200 a month. I wired money through my banking app so often. I had to set up automatic reminders some months when I gently said I needed to keep some money for myself. Mom sighed. I didn't think you'd be so calculating. Our family's going through a hard time. One Saturday afternoon, I came home, arms loaded with Whole Foods groceries, a box of detergent, toilet paper, and almond milk. As I stepped inside, I saw Ethan sprawled out on the couch, chomping pizza, watching YouTube on the big screen. TV ceiling fans spinning above him. No one came out to help. No one asked if I was tired. I set the bags on the kitchen counter and heard Mom call from the bedroom. Did you get Dad's favorite cookies? I didn't answer. I just quietly opened the fridge. The only thing in there that belonged to me was a bottle of water and half a dried lemon. That night, I went home, opened my laptop, and created a new Excel spreadsheet. I labeled each category: electricity, gas, water, Ethan's car, repair, medicine for Dad, credit card debt. I was forced to co-sign when the total appeared on the final line. I sat frozen for almost 10 minutes. 6 months, over $16,000. I printed the spreadsheet and taped it to the wall above my desk, not to remind myself to ask for repayment, but to never forget again, to stop lying to myself that I was giving out of love, when the truth was I was being drained. I started saying no, softly, like a little experiment. I refused to drive Ethan to get his license renewed. The result: Mom called, her voice trembling. You've changed, Naomi. You've grown cold and selfish. Dad sent a short text, you need to know your place. And Ethan, he simply messaged, don't think a little money makes you special. I used to believe that if I was good enough, gave enough, they would realize how important I was. But now, when I started keeping just a sliver for myself, they acted like I'd betrayed them. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of anger, but because I finally realized I had never been seen as someone with limits. I was just a supplier, a pillar, but a pillar with no support. Eventually, it breaks. One Saturday afternoon, I left the office close to 6 p.m. still holding the lunchbox I hadn't had time to open all day. I had worked through the entire week. An emergency investment, risk analysis project, plus a surprise meeting with a major client had kept me from getting home before nightfall. I still stopped by the grocery store like always. I picked up everything Mom had texted me: 2 bottles of almond milk, lean beef, organic olive oil, whole grain bread. The total was nearly $175, not including the snacks and fruit I'd grabbed for Ethan, though he'd never said thank you. I drove nearly 40 minutes south to the old house in East Side, Tulsa, where I'd lived for almost 20 years. Every time I turned onto that street, a knot twisted in my chest, not from nostalgia, but from a familiar, lingering ache. When I stepped inside, it wasn't fully dark yet, but the lights were already on. The front door was slightly ajar, as if they were expecting me. I nudged it open with my shoulder. My hands were full. No one came to greet me, just the buzz of a reality TV show playing from the living room, one of those shows Ethan always watched. I set the groceries on the kitchen counter. The smell of cleaning chemicals stung my eyes. Mom always scrubbed the house on weekends, not for cleanliness, but to prove she still managed everything, though in truth, I was the one buying everything she used. When I turned around, she was already standing at the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, eyes unblinking. We need to talk. Her voice was hard as stone. I froze, still in my shoes. I just got off work. I replied, trying to keep my voice even. Can you give me a minute? No, she snapped. This has been put off long enough. Dad appeared from the stairwell behind her, silent as a shadow. Ethan remained slouched on the sofa, feet on the table, controller in hand. He didn't even look up, just mumbled, "Is she here?" Huh. I tightened my grip on my bag. What's going on? Mom sighed, like I was the cause of all this chaos. Naomi, she said with a hint of reproach, you have a steady job, a car, your apartment. This household is struggling. Your father's tired. Ethan's still trying to find his path. I think it's time you contributed more. I went still. I've been paying for the electricity, gas, water, internet, and part of the mortgage for nearly 2 years. I send over $1,000 every month. What more do you want? Dad chimed in, voice flat. We're talking about responsibility, Naomi. Family is responsibility. If you're an adult, you should understand that. I nodded slowly, my voice tighter than what is Ethan, a guest with free rent this time. Ethan turned, he dropped the controller and sneered, don't drag me into this. I never asked you for anything. If you want to stop paying, just stop. Spare us the fake generosity. I let out a dry laugh, my chest clenched like I'd been punched. The problem is I was never pretending I was generous. Mom slammed her hand on the kitchen table. That's enough. You're getting more selfish every day, Naomi, living on your own, and now you think you're better than us. Do you even realize this house is at risk of foreclosure? Ethan's student loan got denied. Your father lost his health insurance, and you're sitting there counting every dollar like we're some kind of burden. I looked at each person in that room, the house I had helped keep afloat, the people who had never once asked how I was doing out there, if I had enough to eat, if I'd ever missed a rent deadline just to cover for them first. So what exactly is this conversation for? I asked. You want my entire paycheck? Want me to pay off the mortgage in full? Buy Ethan a new car so he can finally feel motivated? Ethan stood glaring. You're out of line, Naomi. I met his gaze. Out of line. I work over 60 hours a week, sacrificed my personal life just to keep this house from being seized. And you, besides clicking that controller and making demands, what have you done? Silence. Dad clutched the brim of his cap, voice lowering. If you were a responsible daughter, you'd understand. I nodded, not angry anymore, just hollow. So if I don't pay, I'm not a daughter anymore. No one responded. I picked up my bag and opened the door. Cold wind slapped my face, like a quiet slap, but it cleared my head instantly. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just said softly, just loud enough. Then this house no longer has a daughter named Naomi. No one said a word after my final sentence. The air in the room felt thick, like all the oxygen had been sucked out. Ethan stood frozen next to the couch, still holding an unopened water bottle. Dad stared at the floor, gripping the brim of his cap like he was trying to reason with the universe. And Mom, she looked at me like I was a stranger, not angry, not regretful, just that dry, cold stare I'd never forget. Get out, she hissed, voice sharp like a razor. If you dare turn your back on this family now, don't you ever come back. I didn't move. Dad looked up like he wanted to say something, then just sighed and turned away. Ethan smirked, not quite in contempt, more like called it. I opened my mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to say one last thing, but then I shut it, because surprisingly, I didn't feel pain. I felt light. I took a step back, still holding the grocery bag. I hadn't even had time to put in the fridge. The front door was just behind me. Street light spilled in from outside, cutting a diagonal shadow across the tiled floor. I turned, pushed the door open before stepping out. I looked back one last time. No one looked at me. No one. The cold wind outside felt like a blade, cutting through every lingering doubt she had. She sat in her car, hands steady on the wheel, and drove away from that house with a sense of closure that years of arguments never gave her. The neighborhood once a map of suffocating memories, blurred into irrelevance as she passed each streetlight. Back at her apartment, Naomi embraced the silence. It wasn't empty anymore. It was hers. The next few days were a strange adjustment. No urgent texts, no guilt-laden calls. The absence of noise was almost startling, but gradually it became a soothing rhythm. She reclaimed her evenings, her mornings, her budget, and her space. Small rituals like frying eggs in a battered old pan or tending to a stubborn mint plant became acts of healing. But peace was short-lived. A letter from the bank revealed that the family's house was on the brink of foreclosure. Naomi's old payments hadn't been used for the mortgage. The betrayal was deeper than she imagined. Phone calls from Ethan and accusatory texts from her parents followed. They didn't ask for forgiveness. They demanded more money. They framed her escape as abandonment, blaming her for their unraveling. Naomi confronted them with calm precision. She demanded answers about the missing payments, but all she received were excuses and manipulations. Her brother's entitlement boiled over into insults. Her mother wielded guilt like a weapon, and her father's silence turned into passive-aggressive sighs. It was a cycle Naomi knew too well, and this time she refused to play her part. With each dismissive word from them, Naomi felt her resolve harden. She severed the connection not in rage, but in clarity, blocking numbers, leaving family group chats, and discarding guilt that was never hers to carry. The family that had seen her only as a financial fallback no longer had a hold on her. She wasn't abandoning them. She was choosing herself. Naomi's story didn't end in dramatic fireworks. It ended with quiet strength, a cup of peppermint tea, and a sunset that didn't demand anything from her. In cutting those ties, Naomi wasn't being cruel. She was reclaiming her life, a life they had tried to make her believe wasn't hers to own. Her journey is a testament to the strength it takes to break free from manipulative bonds disguised as family duties. It reminds us that love doesn't equate to endless sacrifice, and that self-worth isn't measured by how much you endure. Naomi's silence became her loudest statement. As you reflect on Naomi's choice, consider your boundaries. Are there relationships in your life that demand too much while giving so little? Naomi's courage to say enough is an invitation for all of us to re-examine what family means. What would you have done if you were Naomi? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If her story resonates with you, follow the channel for more powerful stories about self-respect, boundaries, and emotional freedom. Naomi's apartment had never felt more spacious. The silence wasn't just in her room. It had settled deep into her bones. The phone had stopped buzzing. The world had stopped demanding. But the echo of the past still lingered, like a dull ache in an old scar. A week after she severed contact, a letter slipped through her door. No return address, just her name scribbled in handwriting she recognized immediately. It was from her mother. Inside was a folded sheet of lined paper. The handwriting trembled. Sentences started but not finished. Crossed out words, smudges where ink had bled from what Naomi could only assume were tears. The letter didn't apologize. It didn't explain. It simply said, "We're being evicted. Ethan's moved out to stay with a friend. Your father is staying with his cousin. I have nowhere to go." Naomi read the letter 3 times. She felt no satisfaction, no vindication, just a profound sadness that even in desperation, her mother hadn't said sorry. There was no admission of how they had exploited her, only another unspoken request for rescue. She placed the letter in a drawer and didn't respond. The next weeks were transformative. Naomi signed up for a weekend writing workshop. something she had shelved for years. She met people who didn't see her as a provider but as a peer. For the first time, she laughed without a shadow of guilt lurking behind her smile. She reconnected with old friends, went on weekend hikes, and started journaling not about her family, but about herself. Naomi was beginning to rediscover who she was outside of obligations. But the past isn't always content with staying buried. One evening, as she was locking her apartment door to head to a yoga class, she saw Ethan standing at the foot of the stairs. He looked different, disheveled, thinner, a far cry from the entitled figure who used to lounge around demanding things. "Naomi," he called. His tone was different, softer, almost hesitant. She paused, keys clenched in her hand. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" He shrugged, stuffing his hands into his hoodie pockets. "Just wanted to talk." Naomi didn't move. The air between them was dense with unspoken words. "Talk about what?" He looked away, then back. "You were right. We used you. I used you. And now everything's falling apart. Mom's living in a motel. Dad's not talking to anyone. I'm couch surfing." Naomi's heart twisted, but she stood her ground. "Why are you telling me this, Ethan?" He sighed. "Because I don't know how to fix this. I thought if I told you, maybe you'd, I don't know, offer advice or something." For a long moment, Naomi said nothing. Then, with a quiet firmness, she replied, "Ethan, I'm not here to fix you. I'm not here to rescue Mom and Dad. You all built a life that depended on me being too scared to say no. That's over." His shoulders slumped. He wasn't angry this time. He wasn't manipulating. He looked genuinely lost. Naomi continued, "You're going to have to figure it out, Ethan, the same way I did. I won't carry that weight anymore." He nodded slowly, as if the reality was finally settling in. "Okay," he said, turning to leave. I'm sorry, Naomi. I am." She watched him walk away. There was no cinematic reconciliation, no embrace, no sudden healing. Just two people finally seeing the truth for what it was. She got into her car and drove to her class, her hands steady on the wheel, her mind clear. In the months that followed, Naomi flourished. She got a promotion at work, published a short story in a local magazine, and even started mentoring younger colleagues. Her life became hers in a way it had never been allowed to be. One crisp autumn afternoon, she stood on the balcony, looking out over the city skyline. The air was filled with possibility, not expectation. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She let it ring. There was no panic, no rush to answer. Not all calls need answering. Naomi's story didn't end with revenge or dramatic reunions. It ended with quiet victories, small moments of peace, and a life rebuilt on her terms. The suspense wasn't in what her family would do next. It was what Naomi would choose for herself each day forward. But life, as Naomi had come to understand, often holds its sharpest twists in silence. One evening, as she returned from the office, she noticed an unfamiliar envelope taped to her apartment door. No return address, just her name, written in an elegant script that was not her mother's or Ethan. She peeled it off cautiously, her heart steady but curious. Inside was a single sheet of high-quality parchment. The message was brief. "Not all debts are financial. We should talk, E.M." There was no number, no further explanation. Naomi stood in her hallway, staring at the note. Her mind raced through possibilities. Was this someone from her father's side? A creditor? An old family friend? Or was it something entirely different? For the first time in months, a flicker of suspense, ignited not from fear but from the uncertainty of a new chapter unfolding. Naomi smiled faintly. The past was no longer her prison. The future was no longer her burden, but the mystery of what came next. That was hers to uncover. Naomi's silence wasn't defeat. It was power. What would you do if you were Naomi? Would you have made the same choice? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if Naomi's journey resonated with you, follow this channel for more stories that explore the strength in setting boundaries and the quiet triumphs of emotional freedom.